Welcome back to another episode of Paper Movies. Today we're going to be covering the sequel to Goldeneye, which is also the second film in the Brosnan era, Tomorrow Never Dies, by Raymond Benson, based upon the screenplay by Bruce Feirstein. Yep. And rejoining us for this stream is Noah from Quality Autism, who joined us for the Goldeneye one. Go check that. And he's also the co-host with Jeremy along the double 007 podcast, Live and Let's Discuss. So, Tomorrow Never Dies, as like I said, the sequel to Goldeneye, and Bond is sent to investigate a British fleet the sailors were murdered, and Bond believes that a world media baron named Elliot Carver is somehow connected to it, so he is sent to investigate. So, just jumping into it. What are you guys' thoughts?
Well, first, let me say that you've heard of the Mandela effect. I'm sure a lot of people have. That's one of the biggest things surrounding this book was the Mandela effect with Bruce Feirstein or Bruce Feirstein.
Or Bruce Dickinson.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're getting at.
Bruce Feirstein. Nothing. Forget it. The Berenstein
Bears.
Bears.
Dang it!
You know the Berenstein Bears is the Mandela effect with the
Berenstein Bears. Yeah,
Berenstain.
Yeah.
So I was getting with the Feirstein. Whatever.
Feirstein. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I
That one didn't hit. So, what do you guys think of this book? Do you prefer this over the film? What do you think?
May I start?
Go for it.
As one of the co-hosts of Live and Let's Discuss. Tomorrow Never Dies is my favorite of the Brosnan Bond films. I think because it really is kind of a transition where Goldeneye feels like a Timothy Dalton script that they just gave Pierce Brosnan because Dalton wasn't going to come back. This feels like it's written for Brosnan's Bond, although Brosnan's Bond's not quite there yet. It has a lot going for it. It has probably the best Bond villain of all of the Brosnan era Bond villains. It has the best Bond girl of his films. It has a lot going for it. It gives me a Spy Who Loved Me film vibe, where the Bond girl is basically Bond's equal, but this time for the People's Republic of China instead of the Soviet Union. I like the villain. He feels like Steve Jobs, and I think that was on purpose. I really like his henchmen and how psychotic and creepy and weird he is. Raymond Benson really brings back something that John Gardner didn't do, which is gave like some of the creepier Fleming things, where he's like his pain and pleasure receptors are reversed, and he like is sadistic towards his towards women and just everyone in general. And like I keep wanting to call him Milton Crest, but that's from License to Kill. But like Carver, like wants that it's Elliot Carver, right? That's the villain.
Yeah.
Stamper is his like main henchman.
Yes. He likes to film what Stamper does. That's a weird, like a little tidbit added on. I like that they do mention that Hong Kong has gone from Great Britain to the People's Republic of China, because that was the original plot to Tomorrow Never Dies, which has been made into a novel called Forever and a Death by Donald Westlake, because he was involved in this early on, but that seemed to have fallen through, which I think Noah has more information on that.
I don't really have much information. It's just because like the filmmakers didn't want to become too political. So yeah, that script got scrapped, and instead he wrote a novel out of it, an original one.
Which for our episode of Live and Let's Discuss that we'll do for Tomorrow Never Dies, we're going to read that as well as talk about this novelization and the film, because I think that it's pretty important to talk about what could have been. But I think this one it's a solid story. This is Raymond Benson's second Bond novel. He wrote what one was, I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't a novelization, but it was he wrote a short story called Blast from the Past for Playboy magazine, which Noah and I have reviewed. It's very much written for Playboy magazine. It's just goofy and pervy and weird. It's a weird sequel to You Only Live Twice. And then he wrote a novel, and then he wrote this novelization. And I really like it because we're really starting to see it's still Fleming's Bond. He describes him as Fleming's description for Bond. It's not Brosnan. It's clearly the Fleming Bond, but he has a lot more of the characteristics that Brosnan has in his personality, which is kind of weird. And that was a direction that he was told to go in with his books, from what I've researched. But one of the interesting changes that I want to bring up is the introduction of the Walther P99, which I went on a rant on the next episode of Live and Let's Discuss for the For Your Eyes Only episode, where I went on a rant about Bond using the PPK. It's an outdated gun. It was outdated in the 80s. They switched to the P5 only to switch back to the PPK, and that has always bothered me. And we finally get a switch to a 9mm striker fired pistol with the P99.
I like. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Only to, of course, with Skyfall, bring back the PPK for nostalgia reasons, because it's an impractical gun. It makes me very mad. Sorry. Off my soapbox.
No, I have actually a note about that. I like in the introduction of his new Walther. It was a lot different than in the film. Like in the film, he gets it from a Wayland's like secret, secret house that she has, where she has like all of her tech and weapons and everything. And he's just like, oh yeah, I asked Q to grab me one of these. But then actually in the novelization, he does actually get it from Q when he gets his new car. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's how it should have been, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going back to what we mentioned earlier, like I like that we were talking about Stamper, and I do actually have a note about him. It's like I like that we actually did get more insight in some of the other characters, like Carver or Wayland. Like we get chapters about backstory, but I have for Stamper, I wrote he's crazy.
Yeah, he is. He reminds me of. He reminds me of the villain in The World Is Not Enough, who's shot in the head. But
Renard. Yeah.
Pain. But at least in here, it's not stupid. It feels like it feels like Odd Job, like from the Goldfinger novel, where Odd Job is like got super strength, but it's kind of grounded in reality. I like this guy as a henchman. He's creepy.
He is very creepy. One of my favorite parts about this novelization is the author's ability to give such great detail and backstory with each character, getting into Carver's like history with how he was raised and his search for his like parents. I found that very fascinating. It really gets you attached more to some of these characters, even the bad guys. It was pretty eye-opening and interesting for Carver. The big change that I thought was interesting was at the party when he's like about to introduce his media thing. In the movie, there's a lot of things that are the same, but the big differences were like Bond first meets that Paris Carver, like in seclusion, like he goes up and sees her on a balcony, and in the book, they're like right there next to Elliot, and she slaps him right in front of him.
Mhm.
And I thought that was an interesting change. I liked the film better when it came to that part, but most of the other changes I preferred from the book.
I thought you were gonna mention the scene. I haven't rewatched the movie in a while, but Bond is interrupting Carver's speech in the movie, and doesn't he just like turn the cameras and lights off essentially in the film? Because in the book, I know it's different. Because he's activating like the fire alarm, and there's like foam or stuff coming down,
Yeah.
which I thought was an interesting little change.
Mhm.
But yeah, overall, I agree with you guys. The backstories, especially early on for like Wei Lin, because I don't think her entire plot with like her briefing with her superior, like none of that is in the movie, and that's interesting stuff. And yeah, Carver's backstory is like straight out of a Fleming novel.
Mhm.
I really liked it. It has like it's like
Yes.
a bit like darkly comedic in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I actually picked up on that too, like the feel of a Fleming Bond, especially when they mentioned Jack Wade. Well, Jack Wade was in Goldeneye, but there's like reminiscing of Felix Leiter.
Yeah, I like that
I
too.
thought that was cool. And we had Bond having toast for breakfast. I was like, ha. I remember reading that, and some of that Fleming stuff was like every book he had toast for breakfast.
Of course,
Now,
yeah.
I did have one note about this, and Jeremy and Noah, you guys might know this more than you guys might remember this better than I do, but they make a reference about Bond's education, like which I don't remember that being discussed that much in the Fleming novels.
It's not.
But
That was something Noah and I talked about behind the scenes before this. Is the lot of the stuff with Bond in Germany that's talked about. We weren't sure if that actually fits in continuity.
Yeah, because Fleming establishes Bond's like childhood in You Only Live Twice at the end, briefly. Like he went to Eton College. And he grew up in Switzerland. So
Yeah.
but here Benson claims like, oh, he spent a lot of time in Germany on the Reeperbahn, which is pretty funny, because that's the red light district. So that was good, but yeah, if that fits, I'm not sure. But it was fun. And that's another thing in here. This book actually talks about Germany, which is interesting because the story takes place there, which I always forget that's the case with the movie. Because the most you see of Germany is the inside of a parking garage in the movie.
Yeah, because isn't Stamper, he's German, right?
Yeah, he's German. Carver is like half German. And his place is in Hamburg.
Okay.
there was like I said, I love the backstories, but I think one of my favorite scenes that I remember was actually a little better in the film was that scene where Bond finds Paris's body in his hotel room, and that doctor who's what was he? He was
the assassin.
Yeah, he was an assassin, but he specializes in like forensics, I think. But I don't know. I've always liked that scene. He kind of establishes himself as like a jack of all trades. Like he's like, I'm a doctor of like forensics. So it's like I specialize in celebrity suicide, and he's like, I'm also a expert pistol marksman. Take my word for it. And I just like that scene. It's like in the book, it didn't really. I don't know. I didn't really feel like it didn't really feel as suspenseful in the book as it did in the film for some reason.
Yeah, they left out the little joke too, didn't they? Like this is embarrassing. Like when he gets the phone call of how to get in the car. That was funny in the film. There's something else there's a little joke that was attempted in the novelization. Bond mentions, or he's thinking, man, I hope Q gets me a Jaguar. And so, and then he goes to the crate when he's getting his car, and a big crate opens up, and there's a caged Jaguar. It's like, that's tacky. And then they go over to
that's actually
another crate.
That's actually from the movie. That's a deleted scene.
Okay.
Which I did enjoy that was in here.
Yeah, but once again, we get stuck with the BMWs. Noah hates the BMWs. They just don't feel like Bond cars.
No.
Noah and I have talked about this before. Because like I have issues like with some of these BMWs. At one point, he's driving a sedan, and it just doesn't feel right. Because I mean, he's driving an Aston Martin in the beginning of the book, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. He does so in the movie.
Yeah.
But they had an obsession with BMWs in the 90s.
What I did like that they kind of kept, that was like when Bond is escaping the snowy mountains in the jet. I always like that they kept that joke. He's just like, hey, ask the Admiral, where would he like his bombs delivered? And I don't know. I always enjoyed that scene. I remember playing that on like the PS1 video game whenever the tie-in game when it came out, and it wasn't nearly as cool, but it was just like, it was kind of interesting when like you got to ski or scuba dive, like similar scenes in the film. But I don't know, I just I like that they kind of stayed somewhat very true to that in the book.
I can't think of one right now, but I like how they also left in the little one-liners that he would say after certain things. I can't think of one right now, but
they print anything these days.
Yeah. I thought that was funny.
Nasty habit with the guy smoking, just to establish Bond no longer smokes.
Yeah, which is interesting that Benson doesn't really talk about that, right? Like the change in like Bond smoking or not, because Tomorrow Never Dies, unlike Goldeneye, I feel this is really the beginning of like 90s new era Bond.
Yes.
Because it just feels more contemporary with like the whole media thing.
Well, the thing is, Goldeneye is still leftover Soviet Union stuff. Like, that's the point of Goldeneye. Is that there's just dealing with relics of the Cold War. I mean, M has the issues with Bond because she thinks he's outdated. We got 008 is running amok and is teamed up with Soviets, former Soviets. And, like, it just feels like leftovers from the Cold War, where this is like we're teaming up with Red China, but they aren't necessarily our enemy, and we're trying not to have World War III because that's Elliot Carver's plan, is to basically
miscommunicate.
Document every war. Well, he's going to create and then document every war, which that gets into some weird territory with the U.S. invading the Middle East.
And also Russia invading the Ukraine, which I had to take a double take looking at that, like, wow. Called it.
He was onto something.
Yeah, they even mentioned that a little bit whenever the skydiving scene, when they actually discover that the waters he's going to be diving into are part of Vietnam, and they're like, he doesn't by chance have like U.S. markings on him, does it? And they're like, oh yeah, on the parachute and the wetsuit. They're like, oh crap,
the flippers, like everything. That was good.
Yeah, that whole sequence is interesting too. The low orbit jump, which is in the film.
Yeah, you remember when in the film they take off their air tanks and they just like float up to the top real fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's mentioned in the book. He's like, "Oh, I have to make sure that I save some air for the very slow descent up to the surface."
Because depressurization, you'll bleed out your eyes.
So I thought that was kind of funny. That
again, it's grounded like a Fleming book would be, and this is so nice because John Gardner, he does his own thing, and it's like 50-50 with him. Half his books seem to be terrible, and the other half seem to be okay. And his License to Kill novelization, which Matthew, you weren't there for, it had Fleming stuff in it. Like Felix Leiter had the hook hand already, and
he got maimed again.
He got
By
made
another
the
shark.
second time.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that was-
he kept that piece of continuity in there.
He kept that, but with Goldeneye, it's like he just ignores everything. So it's nice to have. I mean, we're not directly referencing Fleming books in this novelization. Like right now, I'm reading Trigger Mortis by Anthony Howowitz, and that has like a whole like chapter where they keep referencing other things that have happened. But this, it has the Fleming tone, but it doesn't have to reference things. Whereas like John Gardner stuff, it just doesn't feel like Fleming, like at all. Like Bond's for some reason still young in the 80s. Like he's the same age as he was at the end of Man with the Golden Gun. And M and Moneypenny are all the same age. And that's just like all those books are like that, even the novelizations. But this it's still Bond's still not the correct age, because I mean he would be what, in his 60s, pushing 70 at this point, because he's in his 40s at the end of the Fleming books. He's in his early 40s, if I'm not mistaken. So
Sorry, you made that reference about Felix Leiter like getting maimed by a shark again, and all I can see is just like them suspending him over a shark, and he looks down, and he's just like, "Oh, come on, again!"
Not again.
Literally, the title of the chapter, I remember this, is called "Lightning Strikes Twice."
I remember that. Yeah,
and once again, he gets a note. Bond finds a note that says he disagreed with something that ate him.
I know Bond's just like,
Two people
memories.
And he says, "Lightning strikes twice, Sharky," because it's Sharky, the character Sharky's with him. And I remember thinking that was so goofy and bizarre.
And he didn't even lose like his own limbs. He lost the prosthetic ones again.
Yeah.
So would you guys like recommend this over the film?
Yes. Yeah. The film,
I would say
I
so.
still recommend the film, but like I recommend the novelization over the film. I think it's a lot better.
I'm kind of in the same boat. Like it's kind of like tied. Like I would say, like, oh, I think you should read this film or read this book and watch the film.
Mhm.
They're both good. I mean,
Yeah, I watched the film like a couple days ago, Friday, I think. The thing that you don't have to listen to when you read the book is the fight scene at the media launch party for Elliot when Bond is getting beat with the baseball bat. You don't have to hear the overdone sound effect and then the one huge swing with the baseball bat to the back that has no sound effect. You don't have to worry about that with the book.
I can't wait to point that out for Living. Let's discuss.
Yeah. He gets hit right in the back with a leg or something, and there's like no sound. It's like, that was weird.
Yeah, and like, and I remember in the movie, like, I for some reason think it was a little different in the book, but like in the movie, he's beating all those guys up with instruments. Because I remember in the movie, he like slams one guy into a piano and throws a cello at another guy and just beats him.
That feels like Roger Moore.
One more thing that I want to mention too. I like how we get more of the Chinese look into like their side of things with their government, and how the guy's trying to be raised up to be a new emperor of China and all the little henchmen that he's got. I thought that was fascinating too.
What it feels like to me, you get Matthew and Adam, you haven't read this, but Noah will get it. The Spy Who Loved Me novelization by Christopher Wood is like that, where they you get a lot more with the Russians. In fact, the Bond girl works for Smash in the novel rather than just the Russians in general. She's an agent of Smash, which adds a whole nother level too, because Bond doesn't like Smash.
Yeah, again, I did appreciate like that they did give more insight to the other characters, because when that's in the film, it's more heavily focused on Bond. I mean, he's the main character, but in this one, they try to like I said, just go more in depth with like the supporting characters or the plot and everything.
Uh-oh.
Sorry,
We even get to see Elliot and Stamper show up at Bond's hotel room to catch Paris there. I don't remember that in the film.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that scene, because I feel like that takes a little bit away from the surprise when Bond arrives and finds her dead.
Yeah, I could see that.
But otherwise, I like all the extra like villain stuff in here.
I can see why Raymond Benson would add that in, because the way I look at it with the film, it feels like a reference to Goldfinger when he finds
Oh, yeah.
completely painted gold.
Oh, or like your favorite, Quantum of Solace, covered in oil.
Oh god, I forgot that they did that in there.
There's always a tie into the older films. It's kind of like in Die Another Day, where they find all the gadgets. It's like, so this is where they keep the old relics.
Oh, the cringe scene.
Yeah.
Until the invisible car and at the what was it in Iceland?
Mm-hmm.
At least the car in this is somewhat more interesting because it's like self-driving. That's a fun gimmick.
Or yeah, like he's controlling it in the phone with his phone in the movie.
And the phone has the taser on it.
Mm-hmm.
I always like that.
Noah, what do you think? Would you would you recommend the book over the film, or kind of both?
I would recommend both because Tomorrow Never Dies, I also think it's probably the best Brosnan movie. It's just a decent action film. Like the action in it is very fun. The book I would recommend because it goes deeper into the characters, like the villain and stuff, and his henchman, and the Bond girl. So that's interesting. And yeah, I appreciate the Fleming tone, so to speak.
I did appreciate. I don't know why Elliot Carver is like one of my favorite of the Brosnan villains. But I don't know, because I just feel like with him having like so much control of the media, you know, like especially in today's society where like the media is like, you know, like heavily controls everything. Like, I don't know, it just kind of seems like a very dangerous villain. Like I mean, obviously, yeah, he knows how to use weapons and he's, you know, kill people or can have people killed, but it's just like the fact of like he's, you know, causing trouble just with his influence in the media.
Which reminds me, can I spoil the end quick?
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's something interesting regarding what you said with him being this media mogul. I always felt he is the only Bond villain who should have been arrested. Because that would have been a poetic end, like his picture on the news and exposed as like a fraud and a villain.
Mm-hmm.
And Benson kind of tries to do it at the end. Because in the film, Carver just gets like ripped apart by his machine.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, this also happens, but at the same time, Benson mentions like, oh, there are cameras filming him and everything. So it's like he realized that, but they didn't allow him to change the ending. But he tried to work it in of like him being exposed on the media.
I agree. I think that would have been way better. I even thought about that in a way this like today. It's like, man, you think Bond would have arrested the guy? Man, they're just gonna take his word that he killed him. I mean, he just like threw a giant drill in his face and just let him just get drilled to bits.
Yeah,
that's nasty.
That's a whole thing, because it's not in the novel Bond, out of the novel Bond's way of arresting someone. In the short story Octopussy, he's sent to arrest a double agent essentially, and actually, I won't spoil it because it's a very short story. But that isn't out of character for novel Bond, but it is out of character for film Bond. Film Bond's gotta throw someone in acid or
shoot someone in the genitals, like Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh yeah, or grab Blofeld's submarine and swing it around a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Or I try to think of some other pretty over the top. Blow. What's his face? Lafayette Coda's character in Live and Let Die. Turn him into a balloon so he.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and he explodes.
Or electrocute the Korean man that turned into a white man and Die Another Day.
And then throw him out of the plane.
Oh, you didn't know that, Matthew? That's the whole plot of Die Another Day. He uses diamond science. He's a North Korean. And he converts himself to look like an Anglo-Saxon man. It's so dumb. And That's one of the reasons why the Brosnan era ended right there, because that's just stupid. He's in a Power Ranger suit on top of it.
Oh
That's
yeah, I
cool.
remember that. That's basically how he beats him, though. He tases him with it or something like that, and just throws him out the plane.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gives it kind of like the ending to the villain dies, kind of the similar way to the villain in the Incredibles movie.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if Pixar said we should make fun of this.
You know, I got to say something else about this too. I really liked the relationship that built up between Wei Lin and Bond in the book way better than the film. We had
Yeah.
a lot more. We had
Yeah.
a lot more of her in the story in the novel,
Yeah, she's
and
his
like her
equal.
introduction. Yeah, and her introduction into the story and how they kind of stayed connected, and the running joke that they were bankers all the way up to the very end.
Yeah.
That was
That's
good.
fun. Yeah, that's a kind of a weak point in Brosnan's films in general. Like, he has little chemistry with any of the Bond girls.
I
But
think
in
they were
this-
focused on making them strong female characters more so than having a sort of connection to Bond. Because when we get into like World Is Not Enough, for instance, they're really focusing on making Denise Richards a nuclear physicist. Just the worst person to cast for that.
Yeah, I think we can all agree Wei Lin is the best one, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, with what's her face from GoldenEye second. She's pretty good too.
So, what would you guys rate this book? Starting with Matthew.
I give it an A. It's a good,
Jeremy?
solid book.
A 4.7 out of 5. It's a great first novelization for Raymond Benson, and it made me look forward to reading The World Is Not Enough, which is something I don't. It's a story I do not like at all. But
You're just well, after
That'd be
reading
cool.
this Raymond Benson's work, I'm just I'm hoping that he did better with The World's Not Enough.
Let's
mean,
see if he
it's a
can.
great
Let's see
job.
if he can save Die Another Day in novel form.
Yeah, that would be a whole nother thing right there.
Noah?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Matthew. An A.
Same. A.
It's a good expansion of the movie. The movie plot is in here, but with a lot of nice little extras that makes it worth reading.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's I don't know. It's in my opinion, how I feel a novelization should be. Stay faithful to the film, but add something extra just for some spice and everything. You know.
I agree. Good stuff.
Well, I
Next.
do have an announcement. 'Cause this is unfortunately my last episode on Paper Movies proper for the next year or so. I'm going back to school and I will not have time to be on here, but I will try to release some single cuts for you all. But I've already talked it over with the guys, and it's just the best option for now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We totally 100%, support you, and like I said, we're happy for you, and you're always, like I said, he's one of the founding fathers. So, and
Yep.
so yeah, me and Matthew will be holding the fort down until Jeremy comes back and joins us as our host. So,
Yeah.
I'm wishing you all the best of luck in your school year.
Yeah, so we'll be looking forward to your single cuts and everything else that you got going on. Because the reading, it does take a lot of time. You get a lot of podcasts that you do, and this is hard because a lot of novelizations don't have audio, so
And
it's hard to keep up.
And that's what I've been relying on, especially this year. I've been so
Mhm.
busy, and thankfully I work at a job where I can listen to books all day. So that's how I've kept up. But with Paper Movies, I don't get to do that because so many of these books are so old,
Well,
Yeah.
guys, thanks again for joining us. If you haven't already, be sure to go check out our previous episode for Spider-Man 2. And Noah, thanks again for joining us. And hope if we ever discuss the last two Brosnan Bond novelizations. Hope to have you back on for those.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Next month, we're going to be reading Aliens.
No, we
So
won't.
stay tuned. We're not.
We're taking a break in July.
Taking a break. So when we come back from the break, Aliens.
This time it's war.
This time. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much again for joining us. And again, be sure to stay tuned for our next episode coming out in August for Aliens.